everyone, it's Mary Brownlee, licensed professional counselor. Today we're talking about authenticity and why it's so important for those of us who are trauma survivors and trying to heal from our years of relationship abuse and neglect that went on in our families of origin. Authenticity is something that is near and dear to my heart. I consider myself a very authentic person. I value it highly. It took me a long time to be myself, and more importantly, my authentic self, because I too am a trauma survivor, like so many of you. So I understand firsthand what it's like to lose your authentic self due to ongoing childhood abuse and trauma and neglect, for example. So authenticity is something that a lot of us learned very early on, that it was not safe to be vulnerable. It was not safe to be who we were. So what happened was, due to the layers of really relationship trauma that was happening when we were children, we developed protective parts essentially that came on board to keep us safe. So for example, if we had a parent that was very violent or a parent that was very verbally abusive, you might have developed parts, for example, that disassociate or freeze, for example, to help you stay safe. Or you might develop parts that maybe were fighting type of parts that got really angry and fought back, for example. Or maybe you develop parts that were like depression or anxiety, for example. So depression is another kind of freeze or shut down response too. It helps us to not feel emotional pain. Or like anxiety, for example, might be a part that helps us to kind of overthink and on a very like hypervigilant level to try to stay safe. Like, ooh, if I can just, think of 50,000 different ways to keep myself safe from the abuser, then I'll feel better. I'll feel more in control, for example. So these are just, a very few examples of some of the different protectors that trauma victims can really develop over time. That eventually, when we become adults, say, for example, we're in therapy working on our trauma now, we're not in touch with authentic self anymore. So what has happened is, due to the childhood abuse and trauma, because it was ongoing for so many years, there was a disconnect from who we really were. So what I love so much about, I use internal family systems therapy. You saw it referenced in the video right before this, especially with the 8 C's of self. So IFS, has the concept that everyone is born with self energy. Everybody has this authentic self, this person, this temperament. It's both a combination of genetics and temperament, like who we would have been, if we had been born into families where our authentic self could have been nurtured and safe to develop. We would have been, for example, if we are a genuinely kind of creative, expressive, sensitive soul, maybe that got shut down in early childhood because we were shamed or constantly criticized, for example, every time we had an emotion that was based in vulnerability or sadness or a response to the abuse. Or maybe our parent criticized our creativity and said, you'll never do anything with being an artist, that you're just going to be a failure. So give that dream up, for example. So there were many things that we could have been, for example, but because of things like verbal abuse and emotional abuse and psychological abuse and physical abuse and so forth, we weren't able to develop in the way that we authentically should have developed. So trauma healing is all about rediscovering who we really are and embracing who we really are. And so I've come up with a wonderful list of traits that represent authentic people. So hopefully you'll find this list helpful when looking at your own life and saying, hey, am I on the right track? Am I on the right track of kind of accepting who I am and taking back in, my authentic self and embracing that, not being afraid to be who I really am? Because a lot of us, right, we're afraid to be who we really are. We've been shamed or criticized or abused for being who we really are. So that part of us got really shut down. So it's important to find out and embrace without shame who we authentically really are. Authenticity is really who we are, and what we say we are is in alignment. Like our behavior aligns with what we say we are. That, and authenticity really develops trust in relationships. We can trust people who are authentic. We're not having to guess at their motives, or are they going to lie to us, or are they going to let us down later or something like that. So people who are authentic, they're just who they are, and they don't hide that, and they're not ashamed of that. And so it's almost like an energy that they give off, where people can understand, this person is actually trustworthy. I can be vulnerable around them. I know that they're not going to hurt me. So yeah. So we'll go over these wonderful traits of authentic people. And then I want to talk about the benefits of authenticity as well. And then I would like to kind of wrap it all up with giving you an idea of how IFS teaches all of us that we can reclaim who we actually really are after trauma. So I'll touch upon that a little bit at the end as well. All right. So authenticity is really people who know themselves deep down inside, so they have insight into who they are as people. That's really important. They're confident without being cocky. So confidence is different than, say, egotistical jerks, right? Confidence is just this kind of quiet, calm that is a knowingness of who a person is. And good self-worth is behind it too. So not level 10 ego, but just, hey, I know fundamentally what my good qualities are. I'm confident in my abilities, and I feel good about myself without being an egotistical jerk. We can see through fakeness and insincerity. People who are authentic generally don't like to be around people who are fake and put on, a facade or a mask. We can kind of see right through that, and it makes us uncomfortable. A lot of us who are trauma survivors, we're getting away from the fakeness that a lot of toxic people put on. So this is different than, say, somebody who's on the spectrum or autistic, for example. We're not talking about those type of people. We're talking about like toxic people who are genuinely masking their toxicity and putting on like a facade of niceness around other people. Yeah, we can see through abusers really well, usually. We don't feel the need to tear other people down. So we like to lift other people up and encourage them. We're encouragers, basically. We're not criticizers. We have a solid sense of self-worth. I mentioned that already. Compassion for ourselves and others is present. So people who are authentic not only can have a deep sense of understanding of who they are, but they also use that to understand other people. And because they don't hold themselves to high standards of, unrealistic perfection, they don't expect other people to be perfect either. So they can kind of laugh at mistakes, and there's a sense of kind of self-forgiveness and gentleness. So it's really, again, there's an energy that's present with authentic people. They have access to joy and wonder. So yeah, authenticity is wonderful in that it allows us to be present in the moment and really enjoying life's gifts as they come. Appreciating differences in others. So yeah, we don't need everybody to be the same. We can appreciate differences. We don't get super defensive, for example, or super uncomfortable around people who are different. We can just kind of roll with it. Like, yeah, no big deal. People are different. That's fine. We have curiosity and appreciation for learning new things, being exposed to new people, new cultures. We're not afraid of differences. We're not judgmental. Living life with a unique purpose and meaning. So that's something else that authentic people share. They generally have a pretty good sense of purpose and meaning, and that is really the compass of how they live their life. They're not afraid of connecting or relating with other people. So authentic people generally are pretty open to relating to others and enjoying relating to others. So there's this ease and comfortability, for example, when relating to other people. They're comfortable in their own skin, again. They're going to have a good sense of self-worth. They respect themselves enough to set boundaries when needed. So yeah, people who are authentic, not only do they respect their own boundaries and have an understanding of what feels safe and right for them, but they also respect other people's boundaries as well. You're going to be able to set boundaries with an authentic person if needed at all, and have that person go like, no problem, I understand. They're not afraid of other people's judgment, and they stay true to themselves, even when others disagree or maybe criticize them. So authentic people understand, hey, it's okay for me to be different, and I don't have to apologize for being different. So that's something, especially if we're abuse survivors, we learned to shut a lot of our authentic parts down because we were told they were wrong or bad in some way, shape, or form. So part of regaining our authentic self back is is really accepting all the parts of us that are true to who we are without being ashamed of them. It's just who we are. We don't have to apologize for being different. We can take responsibility and accountability when warranted. If we actually do make a mistake and maybe hurt somebody's feelings, authentic people are able to recognize maybe when they've made a mistake and take accountability for that. We are honest and straightforward without being harsh. So yeah, we can give feedback, but it's not so harsh that it's, ooh, ow, that hurt, No, it's more of, there's a sense of gentleness and non-judgment, even with the feedback. And they have access to introspection and insight. So introspection really, being able to look inside yourself and understand why you do the things you do, for example. And insight too, understanding yourself, understanding other people, and that we can understand why other people might feel the way they do as well. So there's a good sense of empathy and compassion as well with people who are authentic. All right. So some of the benefits now of being authentic is that it allows us to connect to other people who are also authentic. So this is where I really want people who have survived lots of childhood abuse and neglect to understand that part of our healing process as adult survivors of abuse and neglect in childhood is connecting with new people who are not harmful. And that may take us some time to figure out. A lot of us, very common for us to have a variety of other maybe abusive or unhealthy relationships aside from the family as we begin to learn this process of navigating who is good for me and who is not for me. So yeah, authenticity, that's what I tell a lot of my clients. Don't be afraid to be your authentic self, because what's going to happen is the people who are not authentic and who are unhealthy will kind of fall by the wayside. So use your authenticity as kind of a guide and a rudder to find people who are a lot like you and will be safe. So authenticity kind of scares the unhealthy people away anyway. So yeah, it can be like our superpower. Like, don't be afraid to be yourself. The right people will absolutely enjoy your authentic self and want to be around you. We are in alignment with who we truly are, and that actually causes less emotional distress. So that's what's great about reclaiming our authentic self, is no longer do we have to mask. And again, not in like a, people who are on the spectrum have to mask oftentimes socially because they're uncomfortable, for example, in social situations. Trauma survivors can have an overlap with that as well, with being uncomfortable in social situations. But in this way, by reclaiming who we really are, we're no longer faking it, so to speak, around other people. We're unapologetically ourselves. We know that there's nothing bad about our authentic self anymore. And we just relax around others. And again, if they don't like the authentic us, no big deal. They can leave. We're not forcing anyone to be in our life anymore. We're able to live a life with purpose and meaning. That is very huge. So trauma definitely takes away our ability to feel a sense of deep purpose and meaning, and authenticity kind of helps us to reclaim that and find what is truly, something that's important for us in our life. So if we didn't have purpose and meaning before, reclaiming our authenticity is one of those big steps towards finding a new sense of purpose and meaning that will add value and guide our lives. Authenticity is catching. So this is another one that I love to say, that if you are authentic, you're essentially giving other people permission to be authentic as well. So again, toxic people, we're not talking about them. They really don't like authentic people. But people who actually are not toxic will really pick up on your authenticity and actually respond to it. And it's very contagious. People generally respond well to authentic energy. So yeah, this is another really positive benefit, is that it gives other people permission to be their beautiful selves as well. And that only adds good things into the world, right? And we inspire others also with our vulnerability and our openness and our ability to be ourselves. We're inspiring others. Like, hey, look how amazing they're doing. Look how well they've healed. They have this energy that they didn't have before. I wonder what changed. And I kind of want some of that as well. And also, authenticity helps us to form genuine connections with other people. So instead of maybe more superficial connections where maybe the old us might have just kind of done what I call like a lot of people pleasing or fawning, or just trying to morph ourselves into what we thought the other people would like, well, that's not really genuine connection, right? That's like a connection based in trauma. So what authenticity allows us is to really actually now relate on a real genuine level with other people. And that's a beautiful thing. And it's healthy for us too, and lowers emotional distress and psychological distress when we're able to really genuinely relate to other human beings in a safe way. So these are just some of the things that are so important about authenticity that I wanted to share. But really, overall, the big picture is that authenticity builds safety and trust in relationships. And so that's the bigger picture here, right? If we're trauma survivors, we didn't have safety and trust in our families of origin. And so what we're trying to do as trauma survivors is to figure out what feels safe again. What does my life look like if it's safe? And how do I move towards building my life again with a sense of safety? And so this beautiful kind of movement towards authenticity not only is self-restorative in terms of really embracing who we really are, but it also is very reparative in terms of our relationships that we build as an adult after trauma as well. So as I mentioned, internal family systems therapy, or IFS, is my method that I prefer the most when working with trauma. And it very heavily talks about self-leadership and why that's so important. So again, trauma disconnects us from our authentic self, and protectors get born. So those are the things like depression and anxiety and maybe people pleasing, or maybe we have very angry parts or disassociative parts. And all of these parts, again, it's just a job or a role that different parts of us took on at different times based on whatever the trauma was to help us stay safe. It's based on those fight, flight, freeze, fawn responses, really. And if you were going through immense stress due to abuse and trauma, you were in survival mode. You couldn't be your authentic self. So that part of you just kind of shut down. So IFS is all about restoring the connection between who we really are and like our minds and our bodies and our emotion. So we're restoring wholeness and balance to the entire system. And authenticity is a big, big part of that. And so those 8 C's of self that I showed in the prior video, like connection, courage, clarity, being able to see things with a sense of balance and not having that very wide swing in emotions or black and white thinking. Clarity is more like we can see the gray areas as well as maybe the more extremes. And it has a sense of balance, compassion, curiosity. So you'll hear me probably mention curiosity a lot in a lot of my videos on trauma healing, because what I love about the energy of curiosity is it's non-judgmental. So when we do this type of trauma work, we don't want to go in there and shame and criticize our wounded parts, because they're just going to shut down and not trust us and like tell us to, F off basically. So, but if we get curious, there's a different energy about curiosity. It's like, hey, I want to get to know you. I care about you. That's self energy. So when we're going in there and we're trying to figure out what parts we have and why they do what they do and unburden this huge, painful load that they've been carrying, we always want to go in there with this beautiful energy of compassion and curiosity. So that's another sign that you're in self energy. If you're able to look at yourself and others with a sense of curiosity and compassion. That's self-leadership. So I will continue to talk more about how we can rebuild our sense of self and heal a lot of our wounded parts in other videos. I'll link below. If you're interested in learning more about IFS, I'll link below a couple of my other videos that I've already created on IFS that will really help to flesh it out a lot more to make it more understandable. But I hope you found this video helpful. And please, if you enjoyed this content, my apologies, please feel free to subscribe, leave a comment if you have any questions or any ideas that you would like me to talk about at a later date. Love to hear your feedback. And as always, take care, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video.